welcome to Theatre One for the Learning Live. It's a very kind of hot topic at the moment. The next subject we're going to cover, reducing the impact of future water restrictions on golf and sports turf. Certainly, my part of the world in the southeast, it's really hit home this year and to a lot of clubs. So, it's going to be an interesting session. This one, we're very fortunate enough today to have Owen Turpin, Water Resources Regulation Manager from the Environment Agency. We've got Tony Hanson, Managing Director, Environment and Solutions International. And we've got Robin Price, Director of Quality Environment from Anglian Water with us today. So the guys are going to do some short presentations. We're going to open the floor up for questions. I think there may be a few questions later on aimed at the panel. Also, just a bit of housekeeping about your CPD points as well. Don't forget to claim your CPD points back if you've not already done so. The theatre staff girls will give you the access code to gain those points back. So, yeah, open the floor up and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Can everyone hear me okay? Fantastic. All right, first of all, a big thank you for the invitation to come and speak this afternoon. What we're going to look at is water use and resilience in the leisure sector, project that I've been working on for a little while. I'm just going to give a bit of a preamble to Owen's speech when he moves on to water resource and availability, and then with Anglian. So just to give you a little bit of background, the project that I've been working on for the last 18 months or so has been funded by the water companies themselves. It was looking at alternative sources of water for the leisure sector to try and protect the future of the sector in the face of climate change and the challenges that we're going to be facing, and they're going to be outlined in a little bit more detail. Owen's going to focus on national framework, the Environment Agency perspective, and then Robin will move on to the water company's perspective. So, the project that we ran for the last 18 months had three key strings to it. One was identifying water use and source. Secondly was engaging with the national associations and the industry representatives, trying to find how we could actually work with their members to create that understanding, that awareness of the way that water availability is going to change and the need to find alternative sustainable sources of water. And the third part of that was looking at how the tools that might be necessary. What help and guidance would individual clubs need, operators need, to actually achieve that change? Who retained us? Well, just about everybody, I think. It was all of the water companies helped fund the project that we worked on, but we were also working very closely with the regional water resource groups, the Environment Agency and Mosul, who are the Water Retailers Association. In terms of the drive, the process and the discussions that we had that created the outcomes for the project, it was very much driven by the Grounds Management Association, the RCA, Racecourse Association, Club Managers Association of Europe, National Association of Public Golf Courses and the UK Golf Federation. So it's a relatively small number of different associations. And the outcomes that we came up with from those discussions, the scope that we put forward was to create an action plan, or to help and encourage the associations to put together an action plan. The action plans were so similar that during the discussions it seemed quite sensible to actually conflate all of those various elements that came up in the action plans for all of the associations and actually create a charter. So that's where we got to. The Grounds Management Association have adopted the association charter and are encouraging their associate members to adopt the operator water charter, which provides help, guidance and assistance in actually finding those alternative water sources as well. We've got a case study portal. There is a leisure sector water working group, which we've seen as important part of creating the framework for discussion to help that transition. So access for the associations to talk to the Environment Agency and the water companies to find alternative, to smooth the process, if you like, to find alternative sources of water. And the template water resilience plan, which is a key part of this. So when you adopt the water charter, there's a little thank you bit. You can download a spreadsheet which gives you all sorts of information as to the steps that you need to take. It asks you the pertinent questions, gives you all sorts of help and guidance, so you can do that a bit later. I'll leave this on just for a second, but this is the charter. This is basically what we're asking you to sign up to. I don't think that there's anything there, and we'll have a show of hands here. I don't think there's anything there. Have a quick read through that. Is there anything that you wouldn't be happy to do or that you're not already doing? Effectively, it's just asking you to actually take care of the water that you use, to work with the water industry, find alternatives, share good practice, all of those elements. But the key part here is to actually publish the water charter. So once you've developed your water resilience plan, is to publish it so that your members, stakeholders, players understand what it is that you're doing and why you're trying to change your water use. So that's a bit of an overview of the project. For a long time now I've been working through and actually providing a lot of the information on water availability, but we've got some much more knowledgeable people on side at the moment who can actually do that a little bit more easily than I can. So I'm going to hand over now to Owen Turpin from the Environment Agency, and hopefully I can get his presentation on. Talk amongst yourselves for a second.
You can tell I'm new to this. Right, so my name's Owen Turpin. I work for the Environment Agency. I am the Water Resources Regulation Manager at a national level, and so my job is to set policy around water resources abstraction licensing. So our ambition is to make sure that all abstractors get the water they need to run their businesses, but also protect the environment as well by doing so. So I've been asked to set out why you need to consider your future water needs, and I'm going to cover 3 points. I'm going to talk about the drought, which is still ongoing. I'm going to talk about future water resources challenges, and I'm going to talk about future changes to abstraction licenses that you should be aware of, or you will need to be aware of. So, see if I get this right. Hey, right. It's rained a bit recently. But we are clearly still in drought. The summer has shown has been really dry. You would have realised that July and August were exceptionally dry, and this summer follows a trend of dry, hot summers that we've experienced. You would have noticed that the 40-degree heat we had a couple of times, certainly in the south of England, and this summer just gone has been the driest summer since 1995. So quite exceptional weather and drought status this year. It's led to 11 of our 14 Environment Agency areas being in drought. And it's most likely that these drought conditions will continue into next year. So you should be prepared and plan for those drought conditions. Just wanted to pick up and show you the impact of the drought over the summer and what impact it's had on our water resources. So first of all, it's important to recognise that all droughts are different. This one, I remember sitting talking about dry weather in June and thinking, oh, it'll be okay. It's a bit drier than normal, but it'll be okay. And then it is suddenly hit. July and August are so dry, and I think it hit a lot of people by surprise. It just really highlights that droughts are different. We normally expect droughts to be long, slow burn events which take years in the south where the groundwater driven to develop. This has happened over a couple of months, so it just highlights the importance of planning for different types of droughts. So the maps here, the maps on the left-hand side show weekly rainfall through August. And what you're looking for is the red colouring is 0 to 5% of expected rainfall, and then the blues and greens are where rain actually did occur. So you can see that actually there's quite a lot of weeks in August where it didn't rain. That repeated a pattern from July. And then on the right-hand side, there are 3 maps showing river levels, groundwater, and reservoir levels. These are from September, so to some extent they're picking up the lack of rainfall from July and August and showing the impact on rivers. So again here, if you look for the red and the orange dots, the red dots are exceptionally low river levels. The orange dots are notably low river levels, so these are low compared to the time of year, where we would expect them to be at the time of year. Similarly, groundwater tends to take longer to respond to rainfall events. So groundwater this summer has not been so badly affected. There are a couple of dots which are orange there, which are notably low for the time of year. But the real story here in this drought so far has been water company reservoir levels, and you'll see a lot of red dots on the map, and that just shows that the water company reservoir levels have been exceptionally low for the time of year, to the point where it is sort of a worrying level. Okay. So in terms of drought response, this shows well, the picture on the left-hand side is a shot of Wimblewell Reservoir, which is in the southwest. It's one of the Southwest Waters reservoirs, and you can see it's markedly low compared where you expect it to be, with all the mud exposed. The picture on the right is a map of the water company temporary use bans, which are currently still in force. All the purple zones are water companies who have got temporary use bans in force. You might know that as a hosepipe ban. So this is where a water company says you can't use your water for washing your car, for watering your garden, and various other uses. So 19 million customers affected by hosepipe bans or temporary use bans by the end of this summer. So normally by this time of year we'd expect the rainfall to start recharging groundwater to replenish flows in rivers, to refill reservoirs, but we're only just now getting to the time where the soil moisture deficit, the amount of water in the soil, is getting to a normal level where it can actually allow that recharge to occur into the rivers, into groundwater and into reservoirs. So we really need some sustained above average rainfall over the winter to ensure that the recharge commences and we get back to a relatively normal position next year. So generally, if we have above average steady rainfall, not flood peak rainfall, but steady rainfall, we might be okay next spring. But if we get average rainfall, we expect to see impacts on the environment. We expect to see that some of the water storage reservoirs will not be full, and some rivers and groundwater will be below normal. And then if we get a dry winter, which is perfectly possible, like an 80% average rainfall dry winter, we'll almost certainly have depleted groundwater, depleted reservoir stocks, environmental impacts ongoing for next year. And that would be particularly, we think, in the southwest, in the southeast, in Yorkshire and the East Midlands and potentially the east. So what are we doing about it? So one of the main actions at the moment is a lot of the water companies are applying to us for drought permits to take water from rivers, from groundwater, when they wouldn't normally be allowed to fill their reservoirs to be in a better position for next year. So just a sort of canter through this year's drought to give you an indication of the situation we're in. And I'm going to move on to talk about future pressures. So it's probably not going to be news to you that climate change, population growth are going to be pressures to add pressure to water security. So in the UK, population is expected to grow by about 4 million between now and 2045, and that's building on a growth of about 6 or 7 million since 1995. And a lot of that growth is likely to happen in areas where water is already scarce. So you can think of things like the Oxcam Arc, which is a government development area that will like to have more people. Similarly, climate change projections indicate by 2050, summer temperatures are likely to increase, summer rainfall is likely to decrease, and there's likely to be increased risk of short duration droughts. Hence, the sort of thing we've had this summer. But we could also have long droughts which would go on and on. We may not get the winter rainfall to recharge groundwater, to recharge the reservoirs, and so we might get longer droughts. In addition, we need to make sure that the abstraction licenses that we issue to abstractors are sustainable, that they don't impact the environment, and they are resilient so that you can carry on using them throughout the year, independent of the weather, is the ideal situation. And so we know that climate change will reduce the amount of water we have available, so that will mean that we will have to come to abstractors and say, your license is no longer sustainable, we need to take action to make that license sustainable. So I want to move on to talk about the national framework, because that tells you a little bit about how we're working with abstractors and water companies to understand the water resources position in the future. So we published this national framework in March 2020, and it sets out the challenges that we might face from climate change and population growth. It sets out the scale of action that we need to ensure resilient water supplies and the needs of future water users, and it sets out a greater level of ambition for the environment, to protect the environment. And I want to highlight to you the stat on the bottom left-hand corner. Currently, water companies supply 14,000 million litre of water to their customers per day. So remember that stat. And on my next page. So this is some figures that came out of the national framework. So remember the 14,000 stat. We think that to meet future challenges of population growth, climate change, to increase resilience of drought to 1 in 500 years, and to meet environmental protection standards, we actually need to provide or supply an extra 3,500 million litres of water per day by 2050 for public water supply. So increasing by about a quarter compared to currently water supply. I'll talk about regional groups in a minute, but regional groups have looked at this figure and I actually think that's going to be higher now. It's going to be more like 4,000 million litres of water per day. And through this work, we've also looked at the needs of other sectors, so agriculture, industry, power sector. We're not as far forward on planning on those sectors because the water company have a history of planning water. They've developed over the last 30 to 40 years. The other sectors are much further behind, but we're really keen to talk to all the other sectors about your future water needs and how we can best incorporate that into the planning. So you might wonder how we're going to achieve this 3,500, 4,000 million litres of water per day. Well, a lot of it will demand management. We need to be better at controlling leakage and customer demand, but also there will be infrastructure development. There will be lots of new reservoir developments to supply that new water. And I also talked about need to protect the environment. So one of the things that the national framework did, which is different to the previous way we planned for water, was it set out what's called an environmental detonation. Where do we need to be in the future to protect the environment? What do we need to do to protect the environment? Previously, we looked at things in a sort of a piecemeal chunk. We'd let things go wrong. We've seen the environment being damaged, and it still is in many places. And then we try to fix a problem. What we're trying to do now is go, what will the problem be like in the future? Can we plan ahead and make sure it doesn't happen? And can we therefore make sure that we give abstractors surety about the water that we've licensed to them? Just the one thing to pick up is that is a new way of planning. It is uncertain. We can't necessarily 100% hand on heart say there will be damage here. We will need to do further work in some cases to make sure that we understand the damage, but it's new. It's a new area. And where we as environment agency find that there is damage to the environment caused by an abstraction, we will take action. So we will come to abstractors who will write to you and say, we think your abstraction license is damaging the environment, and we will try and work with you to find a solution that works for you and works for us. And we will look to give you sufficient time to plan an alternative source of supply if we do need to change your license. So moving on to regional planning. So one of the things the national framework said is we should have regional planning. The water companies should work together in regional groups. They should involve other sectors. So that's been going on for a year and a half, 2 years now, and the water companies the regional groups are just about to publish their draft regional plans due the middle of this month. So you should get onto their websites, and I've listed them there, and have a look and see what's planned in your region, and do you agree with it? And if you don't agree with it, Or if you do agree with it, write to the regional group and tell them what you think. So the next thing that we're going to do as the Environment Agency is to update that national framework, partly on the basis of those regional plans, because they provide a lot of new, better information than we had before, but also to improve the way we've worked with other sectors. So far, the regional plans have been mainly driven by the water companies, and we want to involve all the other sectors as well, so that everyone gets their voice heard. That was all I was going to say on national framework and long-term planning, but there's a couple of other things I just want to float past you to make sure you're aware of. So the first is environmental permitting regulations for abstraction. So the government is in the process of moving abstraction licensing, which has its own set of legislation, into the environmental permitting regulations. Now, the EPR, as it's called, is a set of regulations which governs lots of things like flood management, waste control, a lot of regulated industry, and it's a way the government is going for all regulated activity that wants to move into the environmental permitting regulations. It has some advantages. It provides a common framework, and it allows risk-based regulation, better risk-based regulation, and it allows operators where they've got different permits of different activities. For example, you might have a discharge permit for releasing water into a river, and you might have an abstraction license in the future. You could consolidate that into one permit. So the government has consulted on this. They consulted in September 21. They haven't yet published their consultation response. Government have yet to lay the statutory instrument, which is a bit of legislation required to put this in place. We were expecting that about now, but obviously government has had its eyes elsewhere at the moment, so hopefully that might happen in the near future. So environmental permitting, the move of abstraction into EPR, we expect it will happen, but we don't have a time frame at the moment for it. And just to let you know, we are developing guidance and we are developing communications with abstraction license holders. So if you're interested in EPR and want to know how it affects you, then please do come and talk to me, and I can pass on your details. And the last main slide, just wanted to highlight that we're moving our abstraction licensing service. It's becoming digital, and you might wonder why it's not digital already. But we have something like 17,500 licensees, and many of those are paper licensees, and quite a lot of them are curled up in cupboards in our offices. We're moving all those into a digital system, digitising them all, and that will have huge advantage for you as abstractors. So you can already submit your returns online, and many abstractors already do that. You can view your license conditions online. You can check your previous returns, and you can grant access to contractors. So there's their functionality which is already available. One of the other things which is really, really helpful is we are now able to contact abstraction holders or license holders in some places and tell them if a hands-off flow or a hands-off level is going to come into force. And that allows you to take immediate action, and we'll also tell you obviously when it comes off force. And then for the future, we're hoping to give you better access to abstraction data, be able to make online applications for licensees, or will be permits in the future, check levels and flows, to be able to trade with other abstractors, to be able to calculate your water abstraction charges, and to view the online public register. So in terms of summary, the 4 points I wanted to bring home to you are: droughts are likely to be more common in the future, more frequent. You as abstractors should be planning now to ensure that you have access to the water, and so that if a hands-off flow comes into force or a water company temporary use ban comes into force, that you have planned to manage that. To highlight that we're looking at the long-term solution through regional planning, and hopefully that will provide a long-term solution. And just to highlight the regulatory landscape is changing. So that's all I wanted to say. So I'm going to hand over, I think, to Robin.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Owen, and thank you very much to everybody for the opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon. My name's Robin Price, and I'm the Director of Quality and Environment at Anglian Water, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that we do in terms of planning for water resources, but then just kind of finish with a couple of opportunities for kind of working with us. We are very keen to kind of collaborate with the leisure sector on water resource planning. We are all in this together, so how can we work together to find some opportunities? So Owen has given a really good update on the current situation, and hopefully has left you in absolutely no doubt as to the seriousness of the situation we are currently in when it comes to drought, and also how increasingly kind of unpredictable the world of water is. As we all know, the impacts of climate change will be felt in the world of water first. So we see around the world floods, then we see droughts. This is all the direct impact of climate change happening right now. And this is really affecting all of us, all water users, and it's absolutely essential that all water users start to think about our resilience to these future shocks and stresses with regard to climate change. And the water industry, of course, is a major player here, and as well as the challenge of climate change, we also have to provide water to meet future economic growth, both in terms of kind of housing growth, but also future agricultural growth in terms of irrigation and food production. But also the need, absolutely as Owen has said, to not just protect the environment but to restore it and to enhance it back to where it used to be. So these are enormous challenges facing us as a sector. And the way we do things, every 5 years we produce what's known as a water resource management plan. So this is something we've been doing for decades now, so very kind of a very mature process that we have. And we produce a water resource management plan that details the investment that we want to make to secure the right levels of investment, the right levels of resilience for our customers to provide for growth and environment and climate change resilience. Owen's already talked about the national framework, and this was a real game changer in the way that nationally water resources were planned. And this took things to a much broader scale by encouraging, as I say, us water companies to work together through the formation of regional planning groups. And when we were charged with the development of these multi-sector, long-term water resource management plans, integrated water management plans that we co-created with many stakeholders. And prior to returning to my role in Anglian Water in January this year, I was the Managing Director of Water Resources East, so I ran one of these water resource planning groups, which is where I first met Tony. I was introduced to the concept of the issues facing the leisure sector and was invited to come along today. So you as irrigators of sports pitches, of leisure facilities are affected in the same way that we are. Now, the way that we plan, we take a twin track approach to water resource planning. Owen has mentioned some of this as well. And the first and most important thing we must do is work to reduce demand for water, so to increase water efficiency and to reduce the overall demand. And for a water company, that's about tackling leakage. Some of these headlines that you see is about tackling leakage. It's about moving more and more customers, hopefully, towards universal metering, and then making sure those meters are smart so that customers have got information about the water that they're using, and we can kind of signal to them when things are going awry. But also working with homes and businesses across all sectors to work on ways in which they can become more water efficient and reduce demand on the mains water system. But just reducing demand is not going to get us to where we need to be. There is an enormous deficit coming. There's a big gap. So James Bevan, the Chief Executive of the Environment Agency, described this a couple of years ago as the jaws of death, and he wasn't exaggerating. So we've got a real, and Owen's given you some of the figures that are ahead for us. So just managing demand isn't going to get us where we need to be. We also need to develop a supply-side strategy where we understand what new sources of water are going to be available for us to provide for customers. And for Anglian Water, the heart of our kind of supply side strategy is the development of new pipelines, of bringing new strategic pipelines, moving water from the north of our region, from Lincolnshire, down into the middle of our region around Peterborough, on into Milton Keynes, and then all the way across to Norwich and down to Colchester. So moving water from areas of surplus to areas of deficit, and then making sure we've got that resilience through connectivity. We've also just announced the location, or the creation, or the planning and the location of two new very large reservoirs, one in the south of Lincolnshire and one in the county of Cambridgeshire, not many miles north of where I live. And these are big strategic options that will come online in kind of the mid-2030s, and again will provide that increasing resilience for us. And of course we're looking at more innovative solutions, or we're looking at other things such as desalination. We are an island, we've got a very long coastline in Anglian Water, we are an island nation, and also how we can better reuse water. So how can we use effluent water or flood water, some of this nuisance water, how can we turn it into something very, very valuable for us? And that's our strategic planning work. That's our strategic planning framework. So that's the kind of strategic stuff we do every 5 years, where we work through these things and how we build this long-term resilience to climate change whilst making sure that we can provide the water for the environment. But what do we do when we have a crisis like we currently have? So when we are faced with a drought, and Owen's already mentioned the drought planning process. And again, alongside our water resource management plans and other plans, we're also required to produce drought plans. So we have to think ahead. This can't be a surprise to us. Oh my goodness me, it hasn't rained for a while. What are we going to do? Crikey, let's plan on the hoof. No, we produce drought plans. We produce these. Here is ours. I have Exhibit A. Anglian Water's drought plan, which we published earlier this year, and these are plans that we send out, that we consult on, and we are directed by the Secretary of State. We are kind of allowed to publish them. And these need to cover the various stages of drought. So we move from kind of normal conditions where we like to be, to then prolonged dry weather, which is where we were kind of back in the spring of last year, to then drought, and then to severe drought, and then to recovery from drought. And these drought statuses are agreed through the National Drought Group, which is kind of chaired by the Environment Agency and by ministers. And each company will have a set of triggers based on, for example, reservoir levels, groundwater levels, or river flows. And then what we have to do then as an industry is detail the response actions that we will take at each of those levels. And we're very collaborative about this. This isn't something that generally we do on our own. We tend to work with our neighbours, our neighbouring water companies, to kind of work out what our response is going to be. And at level 1 drought, so prolonged dry weather, crikey, hasn't rained for a little while, prospects are a bit dodgy. Then the first thing we have to do is really step up our kind of communications with domestic customers, but also with business customers. So again, we have to kind of shower you, bad analogy. We have to wash you over with water efficiency messages. How can you just take a little bit less time in the shower. Wash your vegetables in a bowl, not under a running tap and things. So these are the kind of water efficiency messages we will start to do out. And we also have to double down on leakage. We absolutely have to go hunting every single last leak. At level 2, which is where we are for 19 million customers, and the map that Owen showed you is where we can introduce temporary use bans. So these are hosepipe bans, exactly as Owen said. And I think it's fair to say for most companies, under a temporary use ban, you can still irrigate golf courses and leisure pitches based on kind of health and safety. The only exception I found is Portsmouth Water. So if any of you offering Portsmouth Water and Portsmouth Water have a temporary use ban, then you ain't going to be irrigating anything. So just if there's anybody from the Portsmouth area. At level 3, and this is where we move into what are known as non-essential use bans. And this is where we would apply for a drought order to the Secretary of State. And this immediately enables us to restrict activities such as filling swimming pools, filling ponds, car washes, vehicle and window cleaning, and importantly for this audience, watering of plants on commercial premises. So at the moment we introduce a non-essential use ban, all irrigation has to stop on leisure pitches, golf courses, etc. And just to be very, very clear, a number of water companies are now starting to signal that non-essential use bans are coming, and particularly South West Water. Some of the reservoirs in Cornwall are at the lowest states. They are terrifying. And if you look at South West Water's drought plans, which I did last night, just have a quick look round, they are signalling now the likelihood of a non-essential use ban. So again, if you operate in Portsmouth or you operate in Cornwall, you ain't going to be irrigating a thing come the spring, unless we get this near biblical rain, which we're all kind of hoping for, but we don't want flooding because that's the opposite end of the problem. So many of us are, some companies are at the temporary use ban stage. We haven't gone that far yet. We aren't to the temporary use stage, but we really are all doing rain dances in the water industry, hoping for this rather biblical, because average rainfall just isn't going to cut it. We're going to need something really quite spectacular over the coming winter. And again, even if we then have all that rainfall comes over the winter, if it's another long, dry, hot summer again, we could be back to square one come this year. So none of us can relax. So I think I've just knocked my slide off. Doesn't matter. You've seen my name. You know who I am. So with the threat of non-essential use bans very real, whilst we continue to build our resilience, I would really urge you all to think about your resilience. Think about what would happen if a non-essential use ban happens in your area. Do you feel that you are truly using the most sustainable source of water for your irrigation activity? So is mains water, is fully treated drinking water, the most appropriate long-term answer for your irrigation needs? Are there alternatives that you could improve which could improve your resilience, save you money, save you energy, and importantly could provide much wider environmental benefits in line with, I'm sure, the environmental and sustainable strategies that you have, and also your plans to reduce your carbon footprint as a sector? And the good news is that we would really like to help with this stuff as well. So we would really like to kind of work with you as we all plan together. We're in this together. And there are some really fantastic exemplar projects happening right now across the country. And there are a number of very active conversations between golf courses and water companies where the golf course or the sports pitch is opposite a sewage works. A water recycling centre, we call them in Anglian Water, but sewage works in old money. So, or a sustainable drainage system, a pond or something, somewhere on a housing estate where there's a sustainable drainage system. Well, that water's, that water is there and could well be used. And there are some conversations happening in the Anglian Water region, and Wisley Golf Course are kind of the poster child for this kind of this piece of work. And there's quite a lot of work to do. We're still working through the details with our colleagues at the Environment Agency around the permitting process and everything, but we are working our way through and really actively engaged, which is fantastic. There are also some fantastic exemplars emerging. The Royal Ashdown Forest Golf Club, the Army Golf Club in Hampshire are looking to increase their reservoir storage at their site. So again, building that resilience through storage, grabbing water when it's there, putting it somewhere useful, and then using it when the rains don't come. Berkhamsted Golf Club are looking at car park and roof rainwater harvesting systems. Imagine the amount of water that falls on a roof or on a car park, and again just pours into surface water drains and is lost. And Walton Heath Golf Club are looking at the opportunity of using runoff from the M25 as a water source. And these are amazing examples of golf clubs and others, all of whom have adopted the Leisure Association Water Charter and are working with Tony and his colleagues to develop really resilient water resilience plans. And the advantage to us as water companies, why are we so keen to work with you? Well, that, for a start, some of those examples reduce surface water management. We have an awful lot of surface water management that just barrels its way into our sewage system, mixes with sewers, and then you will have seen the headlines around sewer spills. So that's a major source of kind of sewer spills to the environment. So if we can work together to grab some of that surface water, stop it going into our sewers, irrigate your turf, that's a win-win for both of us. There's the opportunity to reuse effluent again. So again, there's a real opportunity. And of course, the big advantage for us as a water industry is it's reducing the demand on this highly treated drinking water rather than having it as an irrigation source. So just to close, I and my water company colleagues would most definitely welcome kind of conversations with you, the opportunity to work with you through the development of your water resilience plans. If there are opportunities, if there are sources of water that we can work with you on, then we'd be delighted to do so. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.